No, it's a long time. All right, we will call to order the December 21st Parks, Trails, and Lakes meeting. Jamie, do you want to do a roll call?
Commissioner Ramseth,
Here.
Commissioner Geyer, Commissioner Moorhead,
Here.
Chair Steenblock,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Steenblock,
Here.
Commissioner Gary.
Here.
All right, next up is looking for an approval for the agenda with one adjustment of removing 5A.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on that?
Oh, could we now ask the reason for removing that? Is there are no minutes?
Yes, they'll be presented at the next meeting. They're not quite complete.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hearing no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then any abstains? All right, so Jamie, I don't see anybody here for open forum, but do we have any?
We do not have anybody for open forum.
Okay. All right, so then we will move on to 6A, which is the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission duties and function review.
All right, so Chair and member of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, just want to start by thanking you for being here tonight. We should have a fairly short meeting. We did want to get together for our last regular meeting just to kind of close out the year. We'll look briefly through our Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission roles and responsibilities, and one of them listed on there is a annual review for the city council. So I did prepare a presentation tonight. I'll go through that here shortly after we get through this item. But I know there's been some questions on roles and responsibilities, so I just wanted to take a few minutes tonight. This Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission document that is provided is from our city code, and it outlines all of the duties and functions, so it's just a recap as questions have come up of what's the role. So I wanted to share this tonight. I know that at our last meeting, December 7th, there were some questions presented at the end of the meeting, and Administrator Casey will be providing some detail and clarity on some of those questions at our January regular meeting, January 18th. So just tonight, just a discussion. If there's any other questions that you guys have, we can certainly look through this in greater detail, but I wanted the opportunity to provide this as a refresher as we go into additional conversations on roles and responsibilities of the commission. So with that, Terry, do you have anything additional you'd like to add?
No, the only thing I would add is that I did send City Manager Casey email after our last meeting, the day after our last meeting, with just requests to come to our meeting and outline the things that I had listed at the end of the last meeting. And unfortunately, he had a conflict this evening, so he can't be here this evening, but he did advise that he would be happy to attend the January meeting, and we'll go over that list of concerns in January with us. And they just really kind of, for those of you who weren't here, if you didn't see the meeting, they really just kind of talked about getting some updates on a few things that have been discussed outside of us, and then also getting some clarification around roles and responsibilities and when we can expect to be brought into things and what communication will look like with us. So I had a bullet pointed list that I kind of went through at the end of the last meeting, so.
I'm sorry. Did you have any other?
No, it's just kind of like going by me because I wasn't able to attend the last
Sure.
meeting, and so I don't have the minutes, and now I don't have your bullet points.
So,
So I'm just kind of wondering where we are.
All right, so
Yeah.
at the end of the last meeting, I just felt like there were some concerns as it related to communication with the commission was one of the things that I had expressed some concern with because, well, I really appreciate Patrick bringing forward the $450,000 proposal for us. The way that I heard that was through public meetings. We didn't get an opportunity
yeah.
to hear about that and just understand it in a little bit greater detail and have the opportunity to ask questions about that. So I had asked about that. I had also noticed in the community development position that there was mention of park responsibilities in that position. So was looking for more clarification as to what was expected there and whether that meant Jackie's position would not be replaced. So just looking for some insight as to what was happening there. Noted that we made some changes to the senior center this year. We did that new agreement, but we really didn't talk about what that means to us as a commission or what our role would be as it relates to that. So looking for some clarification there. And then we had also heard that Dave will be playing a role with us and Jamie will be playing a role as well. So just looking for getting a clear idea of the role that staff will be playing, what staff will be playing, and when can we expect to see them. And then just lastly, understanding the process of when things will be coming before this commission. Just feeling like it was a healthy opportunity for us to have that discussion and get clarification, because we've talked about things like the clubhouse and this funding and some other things. So had invited both Patrick and Councilmember Bystrom for a discussion on that to try to get some clarification. And so we just thought it would be also a good opportunity to look through what our responsibilities are as it's related to the code and just see if there were any additional questions here or things that people wanted to add to the list. So that when Patrick comes, we have kind of a comprehensive list. And so that's the nutshell.
Thank you.
Yes.
As far as the senior center, I was at an auxiliary meeting for the American Legion last night, and the seniors that were there said they absolutely love Jill. And there's a Christmas party tomorrow that they're going to be having. So that's very encouraging that that place is really taking off and being vibrant.
Good, good.
Yes, and to that point too, I think tomorrow's city staff have an internal meeting to just work through kind of our process internally of what staff's going to be involved in what capacity. So I think we'll get some of that cleared up tomorrow. I know the city's undergoing some changes, so we've got some different people in different roles right now. So I think that'll really help get some clarity on staff responsibilities, commission responsibilities, and I think, even though you're kind of ending this year with some questions and unanswered questions and some confusion around that, I'm confident we'll get that cleared up in January. And tonight really want to focus on all the positives that have come of this year. I think we've come a long way in a very different year yet. So, like as Chair Steenbach had mentioned, if you have anything additional that you'd like to see added to this duties and responsibilities or any further questions, you can feel free to send me an email or call me between now and our January meeting so we can be prepared to get that addressed.
Kim, I was just, we're on,
No, there's nothing further on that. I don't think that's anything that's before the city or that we're involved with, so nothing that I'm aware of. I haven't really even heard much about it other than I think you're talking about the Willow Creek property. Willow Point. As far as I know, I think that's not anything city related, that they are not moving forward with that, but that's again, not anything to have come before us, so.
Anybody else have any questions on our role and what's here, or have any additions or things you want noted?
I apologize again, I haven't read it all, but I think, I hope it's in there, that our role would be to support whoever it is that's going to be delegated to us, Jamie and whomever, that we would be a more active commission, because there's a lot of little things that we could be doing at parks. I know big things have to wait, of course, but there's a lot of little things that I just hope we have a little more active participation. Do you think that's in there somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that, in regards to, the special events and the programs and activities, making recommendations on what those details would be is, I think letter G kind of encompasses some of that, coordinating special events including the musical and free entertainment to the general public, provided funds are available. So that component, yeah, I think is listed under letter G.
I guess I'm looking for GA. Over and above the ones that we work with for special events would be going to Windy Trails or whatever that silly one is said, you know, with some of the neighbors. We could go and get individually or have a group to go and talk to the neighbors and find out what it is they want to help us with. And again, would be a very low money item to go in and do some good work there. So I guess I was thinking above and beyond the special events, to have sometimes that we can just go out as a group, a small group, because I don't know if that whole thing stands with having had
Sure.
more than 4, but a small group that could go out and maybe meet with neighbors, especially at that one, because that guy's been talking to me for over a year now, and so, you know, I'm just saying, if it was an opportunity to say, yeah, maybe 3 of us could go and find out from the neighbors what they're looking for, and how much help they could and then bring it back to the group.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, and I think letter E, evaluate the city's current parks and desires of citizens for such services. So
That-
maybe just an action item is more, you know, scheduled activities where we go out as a group, planned for, and maybe targeted to specific parks or priorities that we have. So I think that's in there, and maybe that's just part of an act of
I have to
executing.
take Betty because she hasn't seen the sliding hill yet.
Somebody did reference that, I believe, on social media, that they've been to that one, so
Been
I
to
was
it.
pretty
All
impressed.
right.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. And Karen, I did ask for a status update on Belts Park
Oh,
as
good.
to why that's changing and where it's at. The other thing that is on the list, and I think you were the one that brought this forward originally too, when the clubhouse was built, there was conversation about us being able to be part of the conversation about the amenities and what that looked like. So I did bring that forward
Thank you.
as well too, so.
Thank you. All good stuff.
Anything else on this one from anyone? All right. All right, we will stay tuned until January, and we'll move on to the 2021 year in review then.
All right. As mentioned, looking to end this year on a recap of everything that we've accomplished, and just do a brief overview of 2021 as it relates to parks, trails, and lakes. So I just wanted to start here. This is a picture I took this summer, and it just kind of reflects on, I think, the year that we had as we transitioned, and as Governor Walz said, sunsetting out of the pandemic. So before I get into the details of the presentation, just, you know, thinking back to January of this year, we were working remotely, we were on Zoom meetings, we still were in COVID restrictions and mask mandates, so it's pretty difficult to think back that was this year in January. So pretty much the whole first quarter of 2021 was kind of spent in that period of time where we still couldn't do a lot. We weren't able to, you know, rinks were available for skating, but we had challenges with staffing warming houses. Other winter events were canceled. And I was making plans of how can we provide community events for the summer if we were under COVID restrictions. So it was a very different first quarter of 2021, just trying to continue to navigate through the pandemic and figure out how do we provide opportunities for the residents in this community. So like I said, that's hard to believe that was earlier this year, but it was. But thankfully, we were able to transition out of that this year. And so what I'm going to run through here, I focused on our 6 key categories of work that we have categorized. So I will run through each of these tonight, providing a recap. Again, this presentation can be presented to the City Council. They do have a workshop January 18th, which is also our next regular meeting night. So if that works, maybe I can get on that agenda for a brief presentation. So if there's any information from this presentation tonight for you guys that is missing or you'd like to see added or changed, just please let me know and I can update that for a final presentation to council. And again, tying this back to the previous agenda item, this is a Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission responsibility to report back to council on our activities. So with that said, in May of this year, Governor Walz announced on, I think it was May 7th, a 3-step process to ending all the COVID restrictions, which was For me, a very pivotal point. I immediately had to stop what I was doing of planning an event for COVID restrictions to back onto our full community events as people have expected. So we were able to, in a short period of time, plan and execute our Spring Fling event, which we held on May 4th. And throughout the period of time, we did see over 250 people. And we did that here at the City Center like we had in 2019, but we really tried to focus on some indoor and outdoor activities, and so we could space things out, and we really had to plan for, still cognizant of COVID. So I think we were able to pull off a great event for that, and that was our first event in over a year. So that was great. We did return to our normal Arts in the Park. We were able to get that started on June 15th, and we ran it every Tuesday through August 31st. We had one rainout, which was rescheduled for September 14th. So we were able to provide all of our concerts this summer. So there were 13 in total, including our community corn feed with the Rockin' Hollywoods August 31st. So I would say, I didn't put in attendance, but we had a very well-attended event this summer on a weekly basis, hundreds of people, sometimes close to 1,000 on a weekly basis. So I think it was a really good impact for the community, and just seeing smiling faces and people singing and people being together again as community was really important. So I think you should be proud of that being able to happen. And then lastly, we did have our hometown holiday, December 4th. Again, we did a portion here at the City Center, and then also the tree lighting. And with all of these events, we still had to think about COVID. So this year for our tree lighting, the hometown holiday, we did pre-registration at the City Center, and I think that's something we learned that worked really well. Some things we can tweak for next year if it's something we want to do, but again, we had really pretty good attendance for both of those events. So very positive for transitioning out of the pandemic. Partnerships and agreements. We had a couple new things this year. So the first one I'll highlight is activities in the park. This was a new partnership with the Forest Lake area community education. And I met with them in December of 2020 to start planning this, because we thought we were going to be faced with restrictions, and we knew it was really important to get people the opportunity to have these activities. So I said, what about planning them at our parks so we can get people outside and safely? And so we built this partnership. It was a summer-long program. The city helped support it financially so we could keep the cost to residents very minimal. So we had weekly yoga and Zumba classes, and then we had 6 youth programming sessions throughout the summer. Those were on Saturdays. So the impact was 251 people, 191 adults and 65 youth, and 32 hours of class. So again, that was at our park and a new partnership. So overall, it went really well.
Amy, what was the youth ones on Saturday? I guess I didn't even see them or hear them.
We had a couple of kids create programs and a soccer lesson and another like sports and activities program.
Neat.
Yeah. So our partnership worked where community education, they scheduled the instructors, handled the registration, and then the city's involvement is we had staff at the park to help sign people in, collect drop-in fees, and be there with sound for yoga classes and such. So it was a good partnership. We each had our own role, and together we were able to provide that to the community. So that was great. We had our YMCA Park Play Days returned again to Belts Park. Again, this is an annual program, ages 4 to 12. And the YMCA uses Belts Park to run the programming. They have different sessions, and this year 62 kids were served, and a lot of really positive feedback of it was a really fun experience, and they just enjoyed being out at the park. So another new partnership this year was Library in the Park, and this was with Hardwood Creek Library. They received a grant from TEFLA, and so this they came out to city parks here in Forest Lake and also in Hugo. They alternated each week, but I summarized our park impact here. These are the dates and parks they went to and the attendance that was at each session. So this was completely run by Hardwood Creek Library. A lot of positive feedback, but it was just a great way to highlight some of our city parks. Again, bring the programming outside, especially in a time where people felt more comfortable with doing that. So impact was at our city parks, 195 people in attendance. And this is just a few more pictures, though, that I just had to share because I thought they were pretty cute, and one's at Summerfield and the other couple are over at Fenway Park. Continuing with partnerships and agreements, Forest Lake Area Athletic Association, we did have a one-year agreement with them for this year, facility use agreement, so that does expire here shortly. Under this agreement, it was a shift where the city was involved in more of the field scheduling and the field maintenance out at Fenway Park. I did have a recent year-end meeting with the association, and everything went really well on their end. They were really happy with how everything went, and we're excited to start a new agreement with them here in the near future. So everything was positive with that.
That's good.
Castlewood Golf Course, again, another one of our agreements we have. So thinking back to earlier this year, we also signed a new contract with Foursome Golf Management. It was a 5-year contract for them to operate our golf course. So some of the highlights this year, we were one of the first courses to open, which was March 13th, which is really early. I don't know their exact end date, but it was well into October where they were able to remain open. So it was a very long season. The Little Rock League participation didn't great. It grew, which is great. It grew from 25 to 81 participants, and that was again in partnership with the Forest Lake Area Schools, Community Education. Rounds of golf increased 18% from last year, and revenue increased over 13%. And then we had, all of our leagues had their banquets at Stella's after those completed. So I don't have any financial information that could, hopefully will be ready by January, but they're still reconciling their books and everything. But from what I understand is we're on track for a really good year, and hopefully we can have some good news on that in the very near future. So I think overall a very busy, successful season at the golf course.
Back to Stella's after years away. At the management for developing a relationship with Stella's and the working relationships.
Well, and conversations both ways is needed for that to happen. You have to have both parties wanting to make it happen. So that's good.
Thank you. Shifting over to our budget and financial category, I'm just going to highlight a few key items here. Our park dedication. As of today, we've collected $130,060 in park dedication fees for 2021. Based on our end of year balance from 2020, with this additional 130 we've collected, we're estimated to have $705,060 at the end of this year in our park dedication fund. Again, just a disclaimer that this is not our audited number, and so things could shift a little bit, but this is our estimated fund balance for at the end of this year, just so you know where we're looking for as we enter 2022. General fund, so this is new this year. Parks, Trails, and Lakes were funded from general fund dollars, which we were approved for $50,000 this year. And recently, as you're aware, $450,000 was approved just recently by the City Council for our 2022 budget. So we will get $450,000 in 2022, additional from in the general fund, not park dedication. So that's a really notable item to bring forward. It really helps align the strategy of improvements to parks and trails and funding those improvements. I think that's been a challenge we've been faced with. So it's really positive to see that support come through financially, and will really, I think, set us on a good track for moving forward here.
To thank Terry for that.
No, it was,
Oh, yeah, I saw
of
the
us.
meeting.
thank you, Kathy, for your support.
I think as we continue in this conversation, when I get to my last slide of what's coming, I think, that's going to play a really big role in our progress moving forward and being able to complete some of the projects we've been really working on. So so I included our sponsor donations from community events was $2,300 in revenue. We collected close to $4,000 from our shelter rentals and community gardens. And then our arts in the park vendor fees, $4,500. So revenue collected, a little over $10,000 there from some of our programs and community sponsors. And I just want to again thank all our sponsors this year. They really played a big role in our community events. So I think a goal for next year is to looking at ways to obviously increase that and develop a sponsorship program and such. We did apply for a few grants. We did a tree trust grant in April. We never heard back, but it was it's an ongoing grant, so we can continue or try again with that for trees at Castlewood. It's a program where they can come out and plant the trees for you, up to 200 trees. So I did also submit a new initiatives grant. I should find out, hopefully this week, if we were accepted or not. It's an opportunity to do something new and creative, and there was a program that came forward with our community garden, so a garden in a box program. So submitted an application for that to have that funded, where it's basically different. It's in partnership with a local organization, and so if we get that, that'd be a good way to expand community garden program and activity. And then also just submitted a grant with Washington County for master planning up to $10,000. So we'll see if we are awarded those funds. Just a brief note on maintenance and improvements. The city continues to maintain parks year-round, so rinks in the winter, ball fields in the summer, mowing our city parks, addressing any other maintenance issues, whether it's broken equipment or replacing of adding rubber mulch to the park or any of those tasks. So we continue to be staffed and do that. New this year, we did take on the maintenance at Fenway Park. So we had a lot of compliments even from the Athletic Association that it looked really nice out there and there were no issues with that. So I think that was a positive step to have the city take over that mowing and responsibility. And then at Castlewood, we improved the bunkers, which was the first time that's been done in quite some time. So there's a picture there. They look really nice. They needed some sand very badly. So that was an improvement that I think has been well received. And then also the fence along Highway 97 was falling apart, but has been since repaired. So those were a couple additional improvements we've made. So thanks to Public Works for maintaining our parks well.
I might add that when they were working on the bunkers there, they're very courteous to the golfers, so did a good job.
Good. Policies and procedures, not a lot of work done here in 2021. However, we are starting to review our parkland dedication requirements in our city code. So this is under some review right now because I think we've discussed this a little bit and maybe there are some areas that we need to make it a little more clear. We're looking at our comparative cities to see what they have for language in their code and the fees they charge. So that is in progress right now and will be carried over into 2022. And we will revisit the park dedication fees as part of this process, but we need to really dig into this city code and what the requirements are, not only for cash, but also for land.
Did anyone ever come up with the answer for, I think Tim was answering about the storage sheds, storage units? Do they pay park dedication?
We have a preliminary answer that it doesn't look like that was paid because the land it's due at the time of subdivision when the land is subdivided, and that wasn't the case when these were developed. That is going to be a follow-up item for January 18th with more information from city staff.
Okay.
So that is really the only policies and procedures item for this year. And then lastly, capital improvements. We did install new equipment at Bay Park in April. We had some good community feedback. People were excited to see something there after a couple years of nothing. And even before that, it was old wooden equipment that was broken. So this was a really nice improvement for that area. Again, aligning with our strategy to improve some of the small neighborhood parks when we have the funding to do so. And leveraging that opportunity. And then the Castlewood Golf Clubhouse construction began in December. So if you've driven by, you probably see that it's going up. I don't know exactly when that'll be completed, but that has started, so that's a positive thing. So, and I'll just end with one more slide here. So that's kind of our main recap of the key areas of work. But looking ahead to 2022, there's a lot of exciting things coming and a lot of work that we'll be working on. Right away in January, we're going to kick off a new athletic facilities advisory committee. This will take place of the former Fenway Athletic Advisory Committee. This is going to be more athletic facilities citywide, not just Fenway Fields. So it's going to also incorporate, our pickleball courts or any of our athletic facilities, Schilling Park, Belts Park, et cetera. We're going to meet quarterly and the fourth Thursday of that month. So I'm working on getting that group formulated right now. I've been so far just in communication with the president of the Athletic Association and trying to determine the key players that will be a part of that committee. So definitely an opportunity for a commission member or two, whoever might be interested in that. We have to enter a new facility use agreement with FLA. I don't anticipate many changes, so that's great. It'll be a kind of a quick contractual item to bring forward to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. We both parties agreed that let's continue the same agreement unless somebody had a reason otherwise, but both parties from city staff and association felt that everything went well last year. So you can expect that to come forward. Winter community event, February 19th of 2021, that's the same day of the Rotary Plunge and the kids' snowmobile races at Forest Lake. So it provides us an opportunity to offer something for the community in the park space, whether it's bonfires and s'mores or some kind of activity just to get people to come out and participate in those other two events as well. So right away in January, starting to put some plans together for that. We'll finalize our Belts Park master plan and hopefully some implementation plans to go with that. Installation of new equipment at Bayview Park will be in spring. Hopefully we're planning to make some updates to the Parks, Trails, and Open Space master plan. Hopefully if we get awarded the grant funding, that will really help us to look at our current master plan and evaluate what's been completed, and then assess to see if anything is, if priorities have shifted. And we also really want to take put an equity lens to it to make sure that there's access to all the parks. And I think the city is undergoing a lot of growth that I think park planning is going to be a big part of the next of 2022. So we can start mapping out what we need and where we're going to need parkland versus cash, and really dig into that whole park development and capital improvement those items a little bit more. So I think going through that exercise would be really helpful to have a more clear and concise plan of execution. So as things come forward, we already know what we need to do instead of looking at it and taking them one by one. We'll have a better plan mapped out. So I think that will really be a helpful exercise and necessary with the growth we're experiencing. So I just put, we do have funding, so I think that's a really positive thing to look ahead to. When you add the park dedication funds with the general fund dollars for next year, estimated 1.2 million will be available for park improvements at Parks and Trails and Lakes. So I think that's really exciting to look ahead to. A new agreement with the city and then the Forest Lake Association and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. So earlier this year, we talked a little bit about the funding and city support of these accounts. And so we're going to enter a formal agreement so that every party knows what's being contributed from each group and organization, so that it's just an annual, everyone's on the same page and knows what that expectation is. So we've had a few internal meetings and have some consensus between the three parties of what that agreement will look like. And so that's a positive. Just highlighting that your boat club lease agreement expires November 1st of 2022. So we'll really need to start those conversations and loop in with the downtown planning process to see what that big picture is and how the Your Boat Club fits into that. I know that they've had interest in expansion, and so I think that's going to really be a topic that this commission will need to work through. And finally, we will get to do some park and recreation website updates, which I'm really excited about, from a couple years ago where we just weren't able to do it for a lot of reasons, but that should be on the docket for 2022. And I think that'll really create a more efficient and clear way for residents to navigate through our city website, because right now it's pretty cumbersome. So I'm excited about that as well. So with that, that does conclude my presentation. I just want to thank Councilmember Byström for the support to our, as our liaison for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission this year. And to all of the commissioners, you guys have been outstanding in your patience and flexibility and just the number of hours of volunteering you've put into our events, programs, and then the support you've provided. So I just really appreciate your time, and I'm excited to move forward into the new year, and I think, hopefully we can have a really good plan in front of us and start our meeting in January with some with some answers and some clarity, and just keep moving forward in a positive way. So with that, I'm happy for any questions, comments, or items that you may want me to add.
Actually, one question, Jamie. So we have the old clubhouse for the golf course. Could we? It's it's a fairly small clubhouse. Could we put that up for sale? Somebody might want that for a deer shack or something. Could we try that, or?
Yeah, I would have to check with other staff on what the plan is for removal of that. I believe it's our responsibility to remove it. I don't know what that process is gonna look like, if it's just demolishing it or if it's gonna be repurposing it at all.
That came up briefly at a meeting, a couple meetings ago. I actually had brought up the idea of to the compost area, because the person that supervises that can't get out of the shade, or can't get out of the sun very well. They just sit in their car,
That's a great idea.
so potentially relocating it down there so they're a little more comfortable.
Yep, that's a great idea.
And if we don't need to do that, or there's another plan for that, potentially it would be an option. But that was just a suggestion that I brought up after having a conversation with him down there.
That's a great idea.
Maybe I can get some shelter, and I thought,
Yeah, great.
Good, thank you.
Jamie, is Bayview really Clear Lake, or where are we at?
Sorry, did I say Bayview? I was
Yep.
thinking of the Bayview Maintenance Institute, Clear Lake. I will make that change.
Okay, thank
Clear
you.
Lake equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They use the green park. That's what the neighbors will tell you.
The Green Park.
The green park. I just had one on the finalized Belts Park master plan. Is that going to include timeline? Because I don't want to just come back and say, this is our new master plan, and then just talk about that for a long time. Is there going to be a part of that that will go also implementation of what we're going to do when?
Yeah, I will request of that when we have our January meeting to have some clarity on it. I'm not certain of the timeline right now, but I have communicated that, and we'll make sure we get some form of timeline for implementation and all of that, so.
Because we will have some money available where we can at least start talking about doing something with it. But just,
And that was actually one of the things that was on my list for them to bring back in January, because there was some conversation around reevaluating the plan that the subgroup came up with that we approved, and questioning why it's being reevaluated and what's being looked at, and do we really need it? One of the things was in relation to the ball fields, and my opinion is that we still need some community ball fields that aren't rented out. And as Commissioner Steenblock mentioned, we have Fenway that's yet to be developed. That's our premier athletic facility. So we were looking for a status of Belts Park, and then I asked if there were changes that were going to be made between now and then, that the sub-team that was working on this be brought into those meetings so that we're aware and have some input before it comes back to us.
once we see, or we did see, I think.
We did
yeah.
see, yep, and we had
Um,
originally approved.
Who's on that committee that we can then give our feedback to them?
Commissioner Ramseth, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Steenblock.
Okay.
Well, I think we'll have a good presentation or update on that whole process for January 18th, and I think by then, hopefully there'll be a timeline as well, and start moving that forward again, so everyone's on the same page of roles and responsibilities within that project of itself.
Yep, we're gonna get her done.
We will get it done. I know master planning, I think it was Lions, one of the parks in Hugo. I mean, I think that they first started their original master plan concept like 8 years ago or some long time ago, and then they recently, brought it back to the table, and it still took another 2 years to get it to that point. So master planning can take a long time, but I'm confident that we're, one of the key things I think that came up is aligning resources and making sure that we're getting what we really need or want for that park, and that have the resources to do it. And I think there's a desire to try to do it as one project instead of having to complete it in different phases, because there's some logistics with what can go first. Does it have to be the building because of the existing infrastructure, or, pieces related to the maintenance side of it? So I think that was part of the pause on, seeing if funding's available, making sure that everything's ready to go, and we'll get a good update in January on that.
On that item, you did hear pretty much a full board say that I didn't think that we were holding everything off to do it at once, that we thought there was something the community we had voted for, waited for, and thought about, and we all agreed with, that we could start that part first. Am I wrong on that?
No, you are correct. Administrator Casey did call a couple additional meetings with Bolton and Mank and wanted to get up to speed from the beginning of what the process was and how we got to where we were, and went through the details with Bolton and Mank to understand the work that had been done. So though we had 1 or 2 internal meetings and one with Bolton and Mank to revisit the planning process to make sure that everyone was on the same page and additional staff was brought into the process. So that was the change of, the timeline that I was working on. We did have a couple additional meetings in there. And right now, waiting for Bolton and Mank to kind of provide that next step for us. So
But they know the next step is that we want the building first.
that was communicated.
Otherwise, our rules and regulations of what we're responsible for, I mean, what are we here for if we're just gonna talk about it and I love Bolton and Mank, of course. But if somebody else can just come in and say, well, now we're on hold and we're gonna do this and this, then.
That's why we want that on the agenda, and that was part of the concern, and just being candid, part of the concern was this committee approved a plan, and with the goal of bringing back to the next meeting the cost of the items and walking through that, and thought it was moving in that direction, and there's been a little bit of change. And that's what we want to understand. And so that is one of the things that was on my list. And I just listed it as, we talked last week about the belts update and some changes to the design. The commission would like to know why these changes are being pursued, when they had a plan, when we had a plan that had met the thoughts of a neighborhood park, and where things are at with that status and timeline. So we're expecting a full.
And I think a part of that would be Father Bodine, the parking situation, he's had numerous wait time to find out what we're gonna do as a city. And, that was, so I mean, we just have to keep everybody on the same page and make sure that someone on the outside of the page isn't making decisions for the other people. And keep Father in the loop, because he's interested in what's going on there. And
at the last meeting, we talked about that, and the idea was, at least the proposal that I remember, was that they were going to offer them the opportunity to use the park and perhaps be able to schedule use of the basketball court, tennis courts, and things. That was the extent, it seemed, of the options being offered or proposed.
because they have their own playground park,
Yeah.
and they'd be too young to really get into leagues with basketball, or, I don't know. I wasn't a part of that.
Yeah, and
so-
we can follow up, because I think that they were gonna originally put in their own basketball court, so if we are able to swap the location of the basketball court where the tennis courts are, so switch where we reconstruct them, then the basketball courts would be right next to their property, and they could then have use of those instead of having to construct their own right on their property. So priority use or some use of the facility and improved basketball courts, which is one of the needs that they identified. And then now they wouldn't have to build their own. They would have, 2 nice new basketball courts right next door that they would be able to use.
Well, good. I'd like to be on the know of that, because their basketball court was gonna be, I think, just for the kids to go down and shoot baskets. They weren't gonna have any kind of courts like
Like a
we have.
full
Because again, they only go to grade 8, so
Yeah, I'm happy to connect with you on
appreciate that.
Mhm.
Maybe on the Bill's proposal, are we in a position to, I believe you've said that the deadlines for grants are like in March. Are we in a position, see us in a position to be able to apply for grants this year?
So the grant you're referring to is the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant with the March 30th, 2022 deadline. I don't know right now, because I'm not aware of the timeline that we're gonna now be working on until I get that back from Bolton and Mank, and I'm kind of leaning on Administrator Casey to provide some guidance on our next steps in this, so I'm happy to follow up, but right now, I know that we have our eye on that grant. I don't know myself if that is going to be something we're applying to in 2022 or not, so I'm happy to follow up or get some clarity for January of what that timeline is.
Are there other grant opportunities?
There are probably some other grant opportunities. That's a big one where they generally can fund, up to 250,000 or more. So that's the most desirable for this kind of project where we're improving accessibility, improvements to the facility. So that's a key grant to apply to. Certainly we can seek out some other ones, but that's the one we've been talking about throughout this process. There's also other funding opportunities with local partners, things like that we can then seek out. But I think the next steps are finalize the master plan, then have pick out the amenities and the cost analysis that align with that. So updating that cost analysis, and then the implementation of, is it all at once or is it a phased approach? And if it's a phased approach, what would go first? What would that phased approach look like? So those are what we still have to figure out. I think we are fairly close. I think just need to have that regroup in January. And Administrator Casey is going to present some information on that process and kind of where we are, where we're going, and who is going to be involved and in what capacity. So I think some other players, our city engineer, I don't know when we'll have a community development director, but they're going to probably play a role at some point in time. So again, just I think for everybody, staff and commission, together on the same page of what we're going to be doing moving forward to complete that project.
Right, I think,
If you think of anything else that I can send this out. It's kind of a larger file, but if you want a copy, I'm happy to get you one. Let me know if you have any other things to add to it. Otherwise, just thank you again for, I think, a great year and getting things kind of back into the swing of things after 2020 of pretty much having to shut things down for a little bit. So it's been great to have everybody back. So I appreciate it.
thank you to you for your hard work as well, and the new partnerships and pivoting. And I do remember we were talking about Arts in the Park, and we had gone through the formula from the Department of Health, and you just were able to pivot, and so we could open that up. So thank you
You're welcome.
for all your hard work. All right, staff updates.
I don't have any other updates this evening.
Commissioner updates? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right.